Now it's time for today's perspective, and the weekend has seen the world marking the second anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a war that has led to thousands of casualties on both sides, both military and civilian. My guest today has a new book out in French, La guerre permanente, ultime stratégie du Kremlin, or Permanent War, the Kremlin's ultimate strategy. In it, Mendras argues that it really is part of a strategy to keep Russia at war in order to consolidate the power of Vladimir Putin and ward off the threat of democracy. Mendras is a political scientist in Russian and post-Soviet studies at the CNRS in Paris and a professor at Sciences Po University's Paris School on International Affairs. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us today.
Good morning.
In the book, you argue that Putin is waging what is his fifth war after Chechnya, Georgia, the Donbass and Syria, and that the country has to keep doing that. Why do you say that?
He has to keep doing that, not the 130 million people who live in Russia and are hostages of his dictatorship. The man is in survival mode. It may sound a little strange, but Putin's position after the war in Donbass in 2014 was comfortable. I mean, he could have continued to occupy eastern Donbass and Crimea, pretending that no Russian military was there. And we were not happy with that in Western democracies. We voted numerous sanctions, but it could have gone on for some time. So he would have weakened Ukraine, probably been in the way of for Ukraine to join the EU and NATO. So what he's been doing is just totally insane. It is insane because he's dragging Russia into a hole.
You say he's in survival mode. At the same time, there doesn't seem to be that much opposition within the country to where he's going, either within the Kremlin or, let's face it, we've got elections coming up, which we know will not be free and fair elections, but we know he's going to win. Why do you say he's in survival mode?
Because he is not rational in the sense you and me are rational. He has the logic of a paranoid leader. He's been in power for 25 years. He shouldn't be there. He's never been truly elected. When he was placed at the helm in 1999, that was to do two jobs. One was to give the army and the special services a possibility to take revenge over the Chechens, because the Russian army was defeated in 1996 in Chechnya. And the second job was to protect Boris Yeltsin, the president, and his family and his entourage, with total impunity, because there had been many scandals. That was why he was put there. And then, the man has managed to stay using more and more political violence, more and more conflicts and war, and that has been his system.
So do you think it could tip then? Do you think there could be a moment when something goes horribly wrong for Vladimir Putin and people rise up against him?
The probability is not a major revolution or rebellion inside the Federation of Russia, because it is a dangerous dictatorship. So it is too risky. But I believe that his incapacity to claim a real victory in this war and the attrition, of his army, of his civilians, makes it impossible for him to win and conquer and occupy Ukraine. He may well claim victory and say, what all I always wanted was Donbass and Zaporizhzhia, and that's where we in the West must be extremely attentive, and with our Ukrainian allies said, no, you haven't won anything, and we will continue to fight until you leave the Ukrainian territory and you stop bombing civilians.
There has been some, difficult news over the last week, hasn't there, with some advances by Russia, small advances, but they have been advances. Where do you think the situation stands on the battlefield now? I mean, it sounds from what you're saying there that there's no way we should give in, and we should still be trying to force Russia back, even if the stalemate continues.
Well, I would say in Ukraine there are two battlefields. There is the front line, which has been exhausting both armies and both civilian populations in those areas. It's a long front line of more than 1,000 kilometers. And Putin and the commanders are just simply sacrificing hundreds of thousands of men. I mean, it seems like 350,000 military and Wagner mercenaries and others have died or been severely injured in 2 years of war. So the front line and the fact that Putin has sacrificed tens of thousands of men to occupy a destroyed medium town doesn't mean that he's winning the war on the battlefield. The battlefield is all the rest, is the capacity of Ukraine to resist, to stop the bombs, and also to start putting at risk the neighboring regions of Russia and try and convince the people that live in Russia that they are at war.
And you mentioned to me just as you came in fact, we've got Sweden today becoming a member of NATO. I mean, that's another way, isn't it, that Putin has very much failed in his objectives?
Well, he is not rational, so he doesn't think strategically like us. So he thinks in the very immediate short term, what can I do to terrorize everybody so that they will accept my desires and my rule. But everything is working against the Russian state. In the last 2 years, the Russian state has lost everything diplomatically, in terms of international organization, in terms of trade. They can hardly trade with, at least 50 countries of the world no longer trade with Russia. I mean, our students, Russian students at Sciences Po, they can no longer go back, but no new students can come. I mean, this is an isolated country. The economic and social situation is not good, and we shouldn't trust the official statistics. And people inside Russia, from what we know, see that there is no future for them. So there is a hope that we in Europe will really get our acts together. And I think the fact that Sweden is joining NATO is excellent news. And we should feel stronger than we are and send more arms and give more support to Ukraine and go for more sanctions against Russia, because it is a war of attrition and we have to win it.
Good to end on a positive note. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today. Marie Mendras, political scientist in Russian and post-Soviet studies at the CNRS in Paris, also from Sciences Po. That's the book, La Guerre Permanente, it's called. So if you're interested in that, you can go out and buy it, as long as you speak French. Hopefully there'll be an English translation one day. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us.